What my resolution is simply saying is we agree with the president, we agree with AG Bondi on the judges and calling upon the judges to release it. So as if in legislation session and notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 335, which is at the desk. Further, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motion to reconsider be considered and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona is recognized.
Mr. President, let me explain to the American people what just happened. My colleague from Oklahoma refused to join me in calling on the DOJ to release all the Epstein files. Instead, he offered his own resolution calling on the courts to unseal the records. When asked if we did both, which I am asking to do both, I want to call for transparency, and of course we could ask the Justice Department and the courts. He's also going to object. Republicans are demanding the courts be transparent, but aren't willing to ask the same thing of the Trump DOJ. This is the height of hypocrisy. They want to tell the courts to be transparent, but aren't willing for themselves to be transparent. This is for the second time in 1 week the Senate had the chance to demand transparency and stand up for the truth. Instead, my colleagues chose to protect, again, the powerful elites. If there's truly nothing to hide in those files, then what are they so afraid of? What are they hiding? Why the panic? Why the backpedaling? And why all the objections? Congress should work for the people, not the powerful elites, and definitely not for one man or one administration. Today's resolution should have made that clear. Therefore, I ask the consent that the consent request be modified such that my resolution, SR 325, be discharged from the Committee on the Judiciary. Further, that the Senate proceed to the en bloc consideration of SR 335 and SR 325, that the resolutions be agreed to, that the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to be reconsidered be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, all en bloc.
Is there objection to the modification?
I reserve the right to object.
Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
It's interesting that my colleague wants to continue talking about the elites, but the elites was the ones that actually covered up the last 4 years of the Biden administration. I mean, think about what happened during the Biden administration. They covered up, 1, for his cognitive behavior. 2, they covered up the Hunter Biden laptop. 3, they covered up the Russian gate and continue to cover up the Russian gate. And 4, they covered up the fact that an auto bin signed every one of his papers except one. Where was the cover-up? Where did the elites come from? Well, it's because of the pressure from the Biden administration that actually did put it on the elite, on all the social media outlets. It's interesting, when I started talking to social media's founders after President Trump was elected, they said, we feel like we can actually do our job again. Why? Because the DOJ wasn't threatening to sue them. The Biden administration wasn't threatening to blackmail them. But yet my colleague from Arizona is saying that we're covering up for the elites. Let's be honest. We know these files have been out there forever. I don't remember a single time the Biden administration called on these things to be released. And I definitely don't remember my colleague from Arizona calling on these files to be released. As I've said before, this is nothing more than political theater. Everybody sees it. The American people sees it. And what else can President Trump and AG Bondi do but call on the judges to release the information? We're simply going back and forth here saying the same thing. The difference between my resolution and my colleagues from Arizona's resolution is mine isn't blurring the boundaries between separation of power. Mine is simply calling upon the judges to release the information. What my colleague's resolution does is truly trying to tell the FBI and the DOJ how they can proceed in doing their job and how they can actually present the information. Basically saying that we want all that information to go through Congress. Well, I'm sure Congress has never once played politics with any information. I'm sure that this investigation will be handled much like other investigations into this administration that the Democrats have done over the last, 8 years. I'm sure this would be handled just like any other thing that they've tried to go after, like the baseless impeachments. or the baseless special counsels, or the unbelievable amount of charges they've tried to file against the president. I'm sure this would be handled the exact same way. What we're simply wanting to do here is give them cover. So if my colleague from Arizona actually wants transparency, then he would drop his objection to my resolution and just simply have mine go through, and we can move forward with the transparency that maybe both of us actually want. So therefore, I object to combining them. I would ask my colleague once again to accept my resolution.
The objection is heard to the modification. Is there objection to the original request?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. Let's just understand
New
why
Mexico
we're
is
here.
recognized.
Let's just understand why we're here. The political theater was started more than 8 years ago. The political theater started just 5 months ago when the president said, after appointing his attorney general, that they're going to release Epstein files. When the attorney general said, I have those files right here, I'm going to show them to you. And then all of a sudden, the shenanigans started. All of a sudden, the files are gone. They're not there. They're made up by somebody else. That's where this political theater is coming from. And the American public wants to know why. Why, after 8 years, this president promising that I will release the files, why, after 8 years, getting into the office and then appointing his attorney general and then directing his attorney general to go look for those Epstein files, and then that attorney general saying they're going to release Epstein files, and then poof, all of a sudden there's an issue. All of a sudden there's backpedaling. This is what stinks for the American public. This is what smells like an elite cover-up. That's what we're trying to get to. And if my good colleague from Oklahoma agreed with me, then we would do both, because that is what is demanded by the American public, because the first promise was made by this president that they were going to release the files. That is where it's political started. So with that, Mr. Chair, I object to the good senator from Oklahoma's motion, and I yield back.
The objection is heard. Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
In closing, I would just simply say, well, maybe my colleague from Arizona and I can work together if he wants to, and we can drop some of the stuff in his resolution. Maybe we can come up with a conclusion with my resolution where I have concerns about yours, blurring the lines between the separation of powers, and at the same time wanting transparency. If we can both agree we want transparency, then we've worked together on several issues in the past. Let's sit down and try working this one out. With that, I yield back.